Hi, welcome to Bill Crockett Ministries. We're glad that you've joined us today. We're continuing our study on living free from financial stress. And we are now in part 7, which is the roadmap question: how do we develop a money management plan? So we've talked about all kinds of things up until now, but in the next 2 episodes, part 1 and part 2 of how to develop a money management plan, we're actually going to dig into the practicality of how to put together a plan in order to manage your money so that you can live free from financial stress. So let's jump right into it. Today, in part 1 of how to develop a money management plan, we're going to look at the 2 largest parts of our money management plan, and that is our income and our expense. So we're going to talk about these 2 things and how do we extrapolate our income and our expense data in order to put together a budget or a plan to manage our money. So let's jump in and we'll talk about that. First of all, we've got to identify our income. Where is our money coming from? So let me give you about 5 things here that I think will help us as we begin to gather information about our income. So if you have a spreadsheet, you can use that. If you don't know how to use a spreadsheet, you have a pen and paper or a ledger book, you can use that. But here we go. Number 1, we need to write down all the sources of our income. Paycheck, a dividend check, a monthly child support check, whatever it is, we need to write down all the sources of our income. Maybe once a year, you get a tax return. Well, that's a source of income. Maybe once every quarter, you get a bonus check. That's a source of income. We want to write down every source of income that we have. So that's the first thing we do. Then number 2, now we have to categorize our income. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do it in 2 categories. First of all, we're going to write down our monthly income. So all that income you just wrote down, I want you to identify how much of that income comes into your bank account every month. So every month you can count on this particular income coming into your bank account. Then number 2, we're going to categorize the rest of it as what we call random income. This is income that comes not monthly, but it does come at some point during the year. It may be once a quarter, like we talked about a bonus check. It may be once a year, a tax return, or at some other random time, but it does not come monthly, at least on a regular basis. Okay? So monthly income is only income that you can count on that's going to be there every month. And that's important because that's how you're going to build your living budget. The rest of this income, we're going to use it to help build our savings budget. So we've got monthly income, then we've got random income. So write down all the sources of your income. Number 2, categorize them. Now, number 3, if you are paid weekly or bi-weekly, what we want to do, what this means, by the way, if you're paid weekly or you're paid bi-weekly, you're actually going to get some extra paychecks during the year that will not be included in your monthly budget. I'll explain that in just a minute. So if you're paid weekly, that means you get 52 checks a year. We're going to build your budget on 48 checks a year. That's 4 checks per month. That's how we want to build your budget. Not 5, because 52 checks comes out to being 4 checks per month with 1 extra month, because there are 13 weeks in every quarter, not 12. So we'll talk more about that in just a minute, and I'll explain to you what we're going to do with that extra paycheck. So if you're paid weekly, you're going to get 4 extra paychecks a year. We're going to build your budget on 4 paychecks a month, and that will be the amount of money we build your budget on. If you're paid bi-weekly, that means you're paid every 2 weeks. Now, this is not bi-monthly. Bi-monthly means you're paid twice every single month. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about bi-weekly paychecks, which means you get paid every 2 weeks. Well, if you do the math, if you're paid every 2 weeks for 52 weeks, That means you're going to get 26 paychecks in a year. We only need 24 paychecks for your living expenses. That's 2 paychecks a month. But what's going to happen is there's going to be a couple of times a year where you're going to get an extra paycheck, because there will actually be you'll have 3 different pay periods during that particular month. So that happens twice a year when you're paid biweekly. So we're going to build, if you're paid biweekly, every 2 weeks, we're going to build your living expenses on 2 of those paychecks per month, which you will always get. You'll always get at least 2 paychecks every month. But twice a year, you're going to get 3 paychecks in a month. And so we're going to use those extra 2 checks towards savings. All right? So here's what I need you to do. We've written down all the income. We've divided it into monthly income, and income that comes in every month, and random income that we get throughout the year that is not every month. Then we're going to identify how we're paid. Weekly or biweekly, we're going to use 4 of those paychecks if it's weekly, 2 paychecks if it's biweekly, to build our living expense. Then if you're paid monthly or you're paid bi-monthly, which means twice a month, like the 1st and the 15th, or the 15th and the last day of the month, you're not going to have any extra paychecks. All of that money will be included during the month when you get your paycheck. So we're going to have to build your savings account out of that actual paycheck. Okay? Now, everybody gets the same amount of money given the fact that you're paid the same amount annually. It's just when you get the money. Okay? So don't freak out if you're paid monthly or bi-monthly and you don't have any extra paychecks, thinking that you don't have the same money. If you're paid monthly or bi-monthly, you will actually get more money every month than those that are paid weekly or bi-weekly, because theirs is spread out over more paychecks, okay? Now, here's what we're going to do with the extra paychecks. You're going to identify when you're going to get those extra paychecks. So if you're paid weekly, you're going to get 4 checks a month, and then 4 times a year, once a quarter, you're going to get an extra paycheck. All you need to do is look at your calendar, count the pay periods. If you get paid every Friday, look at the months and find out which month in each quarter. January through March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Which month during each of those quarters has 3 Fridays? And you're going to find that you're going to have an extra paycheck every quarter. So that's what you want to do. Find out when that extra paycheck is coming so you can plan to use that in your savings account and you don't just lump it in with your monthly expenses, okay? If you're paid bi-weekly, that means you're going to use 24 of those checks, 2 checks a month, and you need to identify the time during the year where you actually get paid 3 paychecks in a month. Make a note on your calendar that that's when that comes, because we're going to consider that random income that doesn't come every month, but weekly, 4 times a year, you'll get an extra paycheck. That's random. It's not every month. Bi-weekly, twice a year, you're going to get an extra paycheck. That's random. It's not every month, okay? It makes it easy to just use those extra checks to fund your savings account. Then you don't have to figure out how much from your monthly income to bust out into savings, okay? So that's how we identify income. Write down all the sources of your income, then divide them into regular monthly income and random income. In the random income, you've got to identify how you're paid. If you're paid weekly or bi-weekly, you're going to have some random paychecks. Identify when those come. We're going to use those to help fund your savings account. If you're paid monthly or bi-monthly, you will not have any random paychecks, and we will build your savings account out based on what your monthly income is. So that's identifying your income. Now let's go to the second category, and that's identifying expenses. So we've got all of our income identified. We've got it categorized, separated out. We have the data we need to use income in our budget. Now we need to do that with expenses. So how do we know what our expenses are? Some people think, well, I need to have a list so that I know what expenses to look for. You really don't. We're more interested in what you're actually spending money on. So the way to find that out is to go to your bank account and download all the transactions for the last 12 months from your bank accounts. And then we're going to use those spreadsheets, those downloads, to help us identify what we're actually spending money on. It's much better to build your budget on what you're actually spending money on, because that's real, rather than guessing by percentages at things that you haven't spent money on yet. So, by the way, when you identify these expenses, it's going to be eye-opening at all the things you spend money on that you don't have to spend money on. You're wasting it. So here are the steps we're going to take. Number one, download the transactions from your bank account into an Excel spreadsheet. Most banks today have online banking, and most online banking will allow you to download your transactions straight from their bank account website into an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV file that you can convert to an Excel, or a numbers if you use Apple. You can convert it to a spreadsheet, and that way we can sort and manipulate the data much quicker and much easier, and it makes it much easier to build a budget. Now, if you don't have that and you don't know how to do that, then you can always take your bank account statements, the hard copies, and use the information from that to manually write out and figure out what your budget is. Remember, building a money management plan takes work, but if you do the work up front and build your plan, then going forward, it won't be near as much work, and it will help you to live free from financial stress. So the first thing we want to do with expense, get the data, download it from your bank account or get your bank account statements and get all of that information together. And we really need to have the last 12 months. You want a full year of spending so that those things that you only spend at random times during the year, you want to know when those come. Like if you pay your car insurance once a quarter or twice a year, and you don't pay it monthly, you want to know when that is so that you can plan on it. Christmas, vacation, you want to know when you're going to need that money, because what we're going to do is we're going to build a money management plan where you save a little every month towards those things, so that when time comes for Christmas or time comes for vacation, you don't have to put everything on a credit card and then make payments on it all year long because you didn't plan. So download the transactions. Then number two, if you have a spreadsheet, this will be easier. If you have a list, you'll have to manually do this. But I want you to sort your expenses by the description or the payee, who you paid the money to. Sort it by that. What that'll do is it'll group all of those together. For example, if you have a power bill and you pay it to Duke Power, if you sort your spreadsheet by the payee or the description, then it'll put all the payments that you made to Duke Power, they'll all be together on your spreadsheet. That way it'll be easier to group them and add them up. Okay? So sort your spreadsheet or your list by the description or the payee so that you have all the same ones together in your list. Then number three, in your spreadsheet, create a column out to the right that you're going to call budget category. And what you're going to do is in each cell down that column, next to each line item, that's where you're going to put the budget category that expense goes into. So create a column on the right, call it budget category, and then when we develop your budget categories, that's where you're going to put that so that we can then sort the spreadsheet and you can find out what the total is for each of those categories. All right. And by the way, we're going to create those categories. We're going to go over all this in part 8 of our series. During episode 8, or part 8, that episode, we're actually I'm going to take you through how to build that budget worksheet. I'll actually have it online. You'll be able to see it, and we'll do it together, okay? So once you've got that done, then what we're going to do is we will write, once we get our budget categories, then we're going to write the budget categories in the cell that corresponds to the right of each of those line items, and then we're going to use that to create our budget. Now, a couple of things you need to remember to do when you're creating these expense categories. First, you need to include in your budget categories a personal spending category or play money. Everybody needs some extra money that they can spend on whatever they want to. When I teach this, I tell people you need a category where you put money that it doesn't matter what you do with it. If you want to burn it, you can burn it. It's not going to hurt your budget. This is play money. This is for you to go do things, whatever you want to do, and that's not in the budget, okay? Everybody has got to have that. Everybody needs some play money so you can enjoy your life, because if you don't have it, it's going to create stress, because everybody's going to do a little playing. The problem is you're going to take money that's set aside to pay your bills to go play with, and then you're not going to have enough money to pay your bills. So make sure you have a personal spending category or a play money category in your budget. Then next, you need to make sure you include your giving in your budget. You need to have, call it tithe, call it giving, call it benevolence, call it whatever you want to, but you need a category in your budget for giving. Plan it. Plan what you're going to give. And then finally, don't forget to include all the items that you spend money for randomly throughout the year that are not included in your monthly categories, like those quarterly, semi-annually, or annually payments. And we'll talk about this more when we get to the episode where we develop the worksheet. But Christmas, vacation, projects you want to do, these are all things that are money that's randomly spent throughout the year, but is not a regular monthly expense. So I know we went through that fast. I hope that this was very helpful. If you have questions, you can always email us, bill@billcrockett.com. You can respond to the video, ask me questions through our social media platforms. I'll be glad to help you any way that I can. But this is how we begin to develop a money management plan. We must identify the income. We must identify the expense, take that data, sort it properly so that we then can insert it into our budget worksheet and manage our money. So that's all for today. Thanks for joining us for this episode. I hope it was helpful. Hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next time for part 2 of how we develop a money management plan.